When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
It is Swipe Right Week on the Elias Macko Show. If you can believe it, singles have been swiping right for a decade. Tinder launched in 2012. Just 2 years later, the app had 1 billion swipes. Since then, it has spawned a plethora of copycat apps. Every day this week, we're tackling a different angle of dating apps, their successes, failures, and place in 21st century society and dating. Today, we talk to a former sociologist for both Tinder and Bumble about the evolution of dating apps over the past decade, what people viewed them as they first launched to today, and how people have come to find their partners and how these apps have become a staple of the dating world. Our pleasure to welcome Dr. Jess Carbino onto the program, former sociologist for both Tinder and Bumble. Dr. Carbino, welcome to the show.
Hi, Elias. Thanks so much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
So I got to be honest, we've done segments on dating apps all week long, right? For this Swipe Right Week. Yesterday, our guest, and maybe you know of her, Nancy Jo Sales. She's done books, she's done documentaries on dating apps. Boy, did she ever have a devastating take on dating apps and what they've done to relationships and dating, right? So I'd love to hear from you. I don't know where this is going to go, Dr. Carbino, to be very honest. What's your take on 10 years of these dating apps and their effect?
Well, I know of Nancy, and I think she's a very smart woman. I do disagree with her fundamentally in terms of our outlooks. I think that you couldn't find two more contrasting outlooks. I think that what's interesting to think about online dating generally is that you think about it in two phases. So I think about the launch of online dating back starting in 1995, where people were really acting blindly. They were sending out messages on, Match, JSwipe, eHarmony, OkCupid, and they didn't necessarily have an understanding of whether or not the person on the other end of the computer was interested in them because they were acting blindly. There was no mutual matching or reciprocity there. So people were really taking a very significant risk and putting themselves out there to try to connect and meet somebody. And then there came the advent of the apps with Tinder in 2014, 2012, where people were really having a much better and richer understanding of the level of interest of a potential romantic partner because of the mutual match. They not could act and put themselves out there knowing that the person on the other end was interested, but also was looking for the same things probably as well because they had matched with them. So I think that online dating has dramatically changed, not just since 2012, but also over the past, frankly, almost 30 years. So online dating has shifted the way people meet from relying on traditional institutions like churches, synagogues, educational institutions, friends, families, neighborhoods, to shifting to this new institution of obviously the internet or someone's phone, and provides people with a greater degree of control than they've ever had. And while there obviously is still the intermediary and third party of the computer or the telephone via the app, acting as the intermediary, people have far more control over finding a partner than they ever have historically.
Dr. Carbino, just that point you just made about that mutual match, right? I hadn't really thought of it that way, right? If you look at what people were doing online previously, just throwing themselves out there, sending that message, not knowing if there was the quote unquote match, and how Tinder revolutionized that aspect of things. So maybe you want to take us on, the 10 years of people using this app here. And, maybe at its core as a sociologist, what do you think makes these apps so successful?
Well, I think fundamentally the thing that has made Tinder so successful and also distinguished it from so many apps is that it democratized online dating in such a meaningful way. Prior to Tinder, when people were using dating sites, it was really a very select group of affluent, primarily white individuals who were using the sites to meet romantic partners. But Tinder, by being a free app, made it accessible to a group of people who had never used online dating before. More people who had never used it before. Tinder started out being targeted towards college students and young adults, people, under the age of 34 primarily. And via that group, it expanded to the populations that never had used online dating. So online dating, if you look at dating data, suggests that Tinder theoretically tripled the number of people between the ages of 18 to 24 using online dating and doubled the number of people using online dating over the age of 55. And that's not just because, obviously, online dating apps like Tinder began to target these populations, but also learning. And by that, I mean that people not only learned that their friends, family, coworkers, et cetera, were using the apps, but also experiencing success on the apps. They were able to say to themselves, well, not only is this something that people in my circle are doing, but also they're successful at it. So why wouldn't I do it too?
We're with Dr. Jess Carbino, former sociologist for both Tinder and Bumble. Dr. Carbino, let's talk about what your work with Tinder and Bumble. What does a sociologist for these companies do?
Of course. Well, one of the really exciting things about my job at Tinder was, when I started, we were frankly just trying to keep the servers up because there were so many people using the app that we only knew the number of men and women using the app at a given time. And as a result of that, I really had the capacity to come in and shape the research agenda and understand what our users wanted. So I came in and tried to understand, how are they using the apps? What are people looking for? How regularly are they using it? What happens when they're not successful? How do they return to the app? Do they return to the app? What do they want? Do they relax their preferences? These were all things that I studied in a great deal of depth and found to be quite fascinating.
One of the knocks against these apps is that there's a bit of addictiveness to them, and that perhaps people have thrown out there that these apps don't want you to find the love of your life. They want to keep you on these apps swiping and swiping. How do you respond to that?
Well, I would argue that the addictive property of the app is really an interesting thing to think about. Obviously, when you're swiping right and somebody matches with you, you get a dopamine hit. But the same thing happens in person when you meet somebody and they indicate interest in you and you're connecting to them. So I do understand, the addictive property, but I would say that, that mirrors some of the other hormonal shifts and changes we experience, some of the other hormonal shifts and neurological events that occur when you're meeting people in person and experiencing love or connection for the first time, or the first time at least within the context of a relationship. But in terms of, apps not having an incentive to keep you, to have you meet somebody and to keep you on the apps, I would disagree with that because it fundamentally goes against the social learning hypothesis that I suggest. If people aren't experiencing success on the apps, they're not going to tell their friends and family about it. They're going to become frustrated by it and leave the apps. So at a minimum, the apps have this very strong incentives to get people off the apps so that they can be successful and encourage individuals that these apps are actually going to be leading them and others to a relationship. One of the main things that the apps purport about themselves and advertise about themselves is the level of success that people have. If people aren't having success, then they're not doing a good job of marketing themselves.
Dr. Carbino, I have it on good authority that you yourself have a very personal story about how these apps work. You met your husband on Tinder. Why don't you tell us that story?
I not only just met my husband on Tinder, I got the job from Tinder. So I matched with Sean Rad. I was using the apps for both research and to meet my ultimate husband. But I was on the apps and Sean was using the app to try to learn about the people using the app, and I matched with him. And rather than going on the date, I came to the office and got a job. So, and then, about a month later, I matched with Joel, my husband, on Tinder. So I think that's really, quite remarkable.
As we wrap up here, Dr. Carbino, is there any advice or suggestions you would say to Tinder or Bumble or any of the other apps that are out there right now? What would be your suggestion on something they could improve on?
I think that something that the apps could improve on right now is to really think about what helps people remain successful in the long term. One of the things that if I were to go back in time, if I were to go back and change things, that I would do is that I would try to really, and I did this partially, but I think one of the things that I really would like to go back and look at, especially in light of the pandemic, is focusing on people's values and preferences in this regard, because I think those types of markers psychologically and psychoanalytically are what help people stay together in the long term and form successful relationships. And I think that it's very hard to measure those things. But given the overwhelming amount of data that we now have about people, maybe not the apps, but, Apple, for example, has tons of data about people. If we were somehow able to harness people's data regarding their psychological tendencies and markers, I think it would be really beneficial to the apps and to the users for helping them find good romantic partners for them in the long term.
Dr. Carbino, I know some apps are sort of deemed as more towards hookup culture than actually finding love. From what you've done with various dating app companies as a sociologist, what would you say to that?
Well, I think it's very easy to label one app as the app for relationships and the other app as the dating app for hookups. But I frankly think that's just not true, because if you examine the data and you talk to online dating app users, you will see that the person who says, I'm looking for my husband or wife, is also on the app that people deem as the app that people are using to find hookups. So people have approach that they would take when, engaging with the stock market. It's not like they're just on one app. The average individual is on, 3 to 4 apps at a given time. So I would say that fundamentally, the media likes to label one app as, a hookup app and another app as a relationship app, but online daters are just trying to find somebody, whether it's on an app that is for people who are, deemed by the media as looking for hookups, or an app that's deemed as people who are trying to find a relationship. And that goes for people who are looking for hookups as well. They're as likely to be on an app for people who are looking for relationships as they are for people that are looking for a hookup.
Dr. Jess Carbino is a former sociologist for Tinder and Bumble. Doctor, I want to say thank you for coming on this week, because you really have given us another perspective on dating apps. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Elias. Have a great day.